You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to the writingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello and welcome to a Wednesday edition of the Writing Community Chat Show. We have a Halloween party coming up on Friday, and we thought it wasn't right to leave out our guest who was planned for that Friday, so we've moved that to tonight. And we will be joined by that wonderful guest very shortly, and we'll get to talk all about her career. We'll get some stories and writing tips and some great insights, I'm sure. Chris Hooley is here with me. How are you doing, Mr. Hooley?
I'm very good, thank you. I was wondering how long I could keep my mic muted for then, because I have a very chaotic household at the moment.
That's not a problem. This show has been renowned for its chaotic backgrounds at times, and this is no exception, Chris. Are you doing all right? How's your week been so far?
Yeah, it's been a good week, and even better for a midweek show. Obviously, get to chat to a great author tonight and find out their journey. But I'm really looking forward to Friday.
Yes,
it's going to be a bit of a mad rush tomorrow to try and find a costume, but I'm looking forward to it. It should be good.
Yeah. I've got a costume in mind, or more like makeup, and I'm sure it's going to go down well. Once we've got all the guests booked in and the panel show ready to go, which I'll be a little stressed about, if I'm going to be honest, but that's always the way it goes down. And I'll get that all sorted tomorrow, and we'll be ready for Friday. And it's going to be like the old times when we used to throw a few more kind of party shows, and bringing the panel show back, which I'm really excited about because I love the panel show.
Yeah, you always put a lot of effort into the panel shows, and I want the sort of guest enthusiasm to match the effort. And I'm not going to lie to people, it's been really difficult to try and arrange guests for this. But I don't care. Even if we get to 7:50 and we're 10 minutes to go and somebody says yes and they pop on, that's fine by me. So if you're watching this now or you listen to it back in the podcast, if you have an author in mind that you think would be great for the Halloween show, just tag them. Just say, it's a free-for-all. You can come on Friday. As long as you've got an hour to 50 minutes with us, 8 till 9 UK time, then you're in. And come and join in the fun.
For some Halloween beverages. Yeah, and some announcements for you guys today. Anna, who's in the chat right now, has been a wonderful person over social media recently, really supporting this show and helping us get our watch hours up. And as of this morning, we have officially hit the milestone that we were really looking forward to hitting. So thank you so much for that support. It means the world to us. We now have to go through an application. Hopefully we get accepted into that. And that's the start of great things to come. And that's all down to your efforts. So everyone that's watched this show, thank you so much. And if you're listening back as well, thank you. It means the world to us. And the podcast itself hit number 14 in the all-time book charts on Good Pods as well. So it's been a really productive, good week for the show. And, thank you so much. It's really great to hit those milestones. And it's down to you guys. We literally wouldn't be able to do this without you, and we wouldn't be doing the show without you. So thank you so much for that support and your kind comments that we can see coming in now from Anna and Anya. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. It still baffles me that people actually listen to what... I know they don't listen to what we have to say because they tune in for the amazing authors. But yeah, it does baffle me that people, like Anna and Anya and Halo and loads of regular listeners that we have will sit and they'll watch it when they're working, or they'll listen to it when they're not watch it when you're working. I don't want to get anyone into trouble, but definitely listen to it.
No one does that. No.
And the commitment that they've shown us has just been, overwhelming. I don't think we could ever repay them for that kindness.
We can with silly parties like we've got on Friday. Brilliant. Yeah, so it's been a really good week, and excited and is an understatement, and just happy that we're making those progressive milestones. So yeah, thank you again. Right, we're going to get tonight's guest on and find out about their story. and I'm sure you guys have got questions for this guest. When you hear things crop up in the interview, please send the questions in and we'll save them for the end as well. And if you've got questions at the last section of the show, which is designated for you guys, please send in plenty of questions there as well. So tonight's guest has taken the literary world by storm with her incredible journey and inspiring work. She's not only a talented author, but a living testament to the power of following your creative dreams. We are about to delve into her remarkable story, her creative process, and the insights she has to offer to aspiring writers and literature enthusiasts. This show provides lots of writing advice and tips while exploring the life of yet another passionate author. So with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Leyla Cardena. Hello, Leyla.
Hey.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me. Thank you very much. Really.
You are
really.
Sorry.
It's a joy to be here. Really.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Honestly, it's a pleasure for us. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Well, a bit tired, and I've got my third book to write, and at the same time, I'm educating my dog. So I just had a dog since July, and
Nice.
he came from Romania. He's a rescued dog because he used to be mistreated. So there's a lot of re-education to do for him.
Yeah.
But he's all happy, and he just doesn't like the rain.
Yeah.
Because
Who
now
does?
it's raining. So apart from that, really focused on the third book, and everything is already written down, the chapter structure, the concepts, etc., and the style for my creatures or monsters. So I'm happy with that. Like that, I can really start to literally write on my computer now that everything is written down, the concept, everything.
Yeah, brilliant. What's the dog's name?
Yakari.
Yakari?
Yakari.
Oh, that was fairly close. Yeah.
Yes.
Brilliant. And where in the world are you joining us from tonight?
Switzerland, in Geneva, in Switzerland. So I don't know if you know, but in Geneva we actually speak French. We don't speak German because it's so close to France. So
yeah, and
here I am. I'm not far away. It's just 1 hour from London.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. And how is the kind of writing culture where you are? Is it kind of apparent, or is it something that you kind of don't see around, or is something you have to go dig in for and finding?
Well, for me, half of the work is about doing research. First of all, I usually love to do historical research.
Yeah.
And of course, as I mainly write psychological thrillers and horrors, of course, psychology and psychiatry. Now, when I say psychology and psychiatry, I'm not really talking about the DSM specifically, or how a therapist would help a patient. I'm talking about certain concepts, certain ideas that certain brilliant psychoanalysts used to have. They may be outdated, but they're good. For example, Jung. Jung is becoming insane is based on Jung because of the archetypes and the fairy tale kind of archetypes, the mythology. So here you go. So it's a lot about symbolism.
Yeah.
So I would say, doing your research, of course, you have to do research in subjects that interests the author. Otherwise, you won't be able to follow anything. So for me, it would be history, psychology. Well, there's mythology, of course, but that is into history. And what else? Well, I would say when it comes to mythology and history, um, about um, about different kinds of mythology and different kinds of history, not just, for example, the European kind of
Hmm.
mythology and history, but from all over the world, because the perspective is different. What, for example, we could consider as being frightening or bad luck, like black cats, is not at all in a different part of the world.
Yeah.
A black cat is just a cat. So,
I was
so
going to
I,
ask the question because you wrote your first book in French and your second book in English. So,
yes.
in terms of doing that, obviously there's different techniques to doing that. But do you find that the readership is different? So, for example, if people don't find cats scary in one culture, do you find that you have to adapt your writing to cater for kind of different cultures because they read differently?
No, not necessarily, because it's about um, integrating this difference into something that you know.
Yeah.
And that is what makes it scarier. It's this weirdness, something that was never heard and seen before. So
Mm.
um, it helps to be original in a sense. It really helps to be original. Now, of course, every part of the world has ghost stories, stories with demons, stories with monsters, but symbolically, it's different. They signify something else, or they have a very particular kind of physique that symbolize, I don't know, like for example, greed or envy or things like that. So it really helps, and I think that any person that is inspired by, I don't know, anything like movies, books, do search for something. They do want a new perspective on things. And you can have this perspective through other philosophies, other point of views, and other mythologies
Hmm.
also.
Yeah. Fantastic. Right. The first part of the show, we're going to play a tiny little video, and then we're going to hopefully find out about your journey into the writing world. So let me play this road to writing video, and we'll get stuck into that. So, Leyla, you talked about plenty of things there about your kind of inspirations or your kind of what you like to write about and why you like to write about it in the history. But what we want to find out is how you got into the writing world in the first place. What were the inspirations for you to get into writing to start with?
Well, I think I always knew since I was a kid that I needed to create.
Yeah.
I used to drive my parents crazy because I always needed more and more dolls like that I could, really create like a scenario and different characters. And then at 11 years old, I told myself, well, why not write a book? Why not write? Now, of course, you can't compare the writings of an 11-year-old to someone who's already 30 plus, but uh, it's something that I really wanted to do for a very long time. And it really does become a drug after a certain time. Uh, no matter what, no matter what you're doing when it comes to something that is creative, if you're watching a movie or even a video or listening to music, which is one of the most inspiring elements for me, it's listening to music. You'll automatically, have like ideas, and then you'll visualize your characters, their environment, and what's happening. And it's a beautiful experience intense and beautiful. And you see, it's not about just hearing music or watching a movie or reading a book. It's about feeling it, really feeling it. And even if, for example, I don't know, you listen to, let's say, a romantic song, a song that is basically about romance, you can still take the rhythm of this song or the words of this song and, in a sense, twist them for something like horror, for example, or for a thriller book, you see?
Yeah. So at the age of 11, when you wanted to start writing, did you find that kind of something you easily got into? And then how did that then lead on to you actually writing and publishing your first novel?
Well, at 11, I wouldn't say very easily because my ideas were still very, naive and basic. It took some time for me to really, let's say, be as original as possible. And of course, you can't say, I mean, the best writings come with life experiences and maybe even more specifically, emotional experiences.
Yeah.
So, of course, from 11 to 23 years old, when I published my book in French, uh, a lot had already happened. I used to be a legal assistant in the corporate domain. I had a life, another kind of life, but it wasn't fulfilling for me anymore. So I really wanted to pursue my dream. I started to write in French, and then I started to write in English because of the geographical location of Becoming Insane. Because when I invented the characters, I used to hear them speak in English with the more specifically a New York accent, a little bit New Jersey style, soprano style kind of accent. And it's difficult to get away from that. So I thought, just write it in English. Plus, I'm half British, so I'm bilingual from my mother's side. So you can't really translate the feeling of English or American English with the New York accent, the and all of that to French. It wouldn't give this this authenticity.
So perhaps if someone is going down the same route as you've been down in terms of they've written a book in one language and then they really want to try and write a book in a second language, what tip would you give them based on your experience?
Well, when it comes to the content of the book, it's important, I think, to really look at in which location is the book. And also, when it comes to the dialogue, now we're mostly talking about dialogue, who is your character? And what kind of words will your character use in his or her casual language? And is this casual language from a specific area? For example, you can't compare the casual language of, I don't know, Liverpool to New Jersey. You see what I mean? There are certain terms that mean something that need to be respected to have the feel. And then when it comes to the writing, well, it's really important to correct yourself and edit and perfect yourself, because it's my case, I'm not perfect, and my writing does demand a little bit of editing sometimes.
Yes, as most of people's writing does, that horrendous editing process. I mean, some people love the editing process, but I certainly don't. Chris, any questions on Leyla's road to writing?
I just love the concept of you hearing the characters with American accents. And I suppose my question around that is, which is the better, in your opinion, of the two languages, French or English, to express emotions?
They're very different because French embellishes. For example, I know when I used to work as an assistant, even in emails, when you write an email, even to your boss, the salutations are like best wishes, have a good day. It's really down to the point in English. In French, let's say you have a phrase like that in English, in French it's like this, especially anything that is official. So, of course, French has this very romantic way to express certain things. You can do it in English, of course, no problem, but it does go straight to the point. If I had to give a bit of a stupid image, I would say that English is a bit like the earth, the element of earth, and French is a bit like water. It's flowy, it's long.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. I did like that what you mentioned about writing the dialogue compared to kind of the locality of the characters. So that is interesting and a good point for someone who is taking that challenge on. So when you first wrote your first novel, were you looking at any kind of, did you have a plan to get that marketed and picked up by an agent? What was your plan for that point of time?
Yes, but it didn't really go anywhere, to be honest. And this was in 2013. I was 23, and this is where I literally was hit with my burnout and my anxiety attacks. So I just stopped until I was able to write again, and this time in English in 2014, 2015. And this is when the characters of John Crane and Jack Vane were created.
Yeah. Excellent. And obviously with your books, the way you've written them now, and you've got thrillers and horror elements into the story, is there anything else genre-wise you would look into writing, or you kind of feel that this is your craft?
Actually, I do. It would be science fiction, but more of a science fiction noir kind of feel. Um, the thing is that my dream would be to write in every genre, just because, just for the fun, you know. I love what I do. I love writing, so why not? However, there will always be more horror, maybe, and more thriller kind of elements that will come out from the science fiction or the fantasy that I write.
Yeah. I mean, what is it about horror or thrillers that attracts you? I'm a big fan of horror myself, but what is it that inspires you to write horror?
I think it's the confrontation to ourselves, not just our fears, but ourselves. And well, lately for me, it was about trying to find new kinds of movies that would be original, you know, and in the horror genre and thriller genre. But I think it's about, you know, finally accepting our dark side, our shadows. Because I used to be scared of anything when I was a kid. I had to sleep with a lamp on because I was scared of the dark.
Yeah.
And my parents always were great lovers of movies and horror movies. So, you know, I got introduced to that too, but I also discovered by watching other movies and also reading other books that there is other kinds of horror, like dramas,
Mm-hmm.
in certain plays, for example. I may have been too young to watch this movie before I read the play, but Streetcar Named Desire, it's a horror movie for me. I was in tears for 3 days when I saw the movie with Marlon Brando and Vivian Leigh. So
It's a great film.
yeah, the ghosts and the monsters, you know, they were nothing for a while. But I think that it's about confronting our shadows and accepting them, and then, let's say, returning to the surface. We all have to go into our cave, you know, to get the ideas for a thriller or horror book. However, it's important to know yourself and know if you're capable of coming back unwounded from the cave.
So, Leyla, when did you decide that you were going to start taking? Obviously, you mentioned before about having anxiety yourself. When did you decide that, you know, enough is enough? I'm going to start writing about some of the things that I may be afraid of.
I think it must have been in 2014 when I felt capable of it, where I knew that things that used to scare me would not give me anxiety anymore. Plus, naturally, they don't, because they all projected onto your characters and onto the story. And while you're writing something that may be frightening, it's a very intellectual process. It does not really affect you. You're really behind the scenes, you know, structuring everything. So it really is, it's sublimation in a sense. And it's quite an incredible feeling too, because all of my own fears were, of course, injected into my characters. And then you do consider your characters as being like your babies, and then you want to protect them. And then you understand, you know, about a little bit how you can love yourself also.
I mean, horror it's an exceptional genre, but what do you look for in a book or in a film that you consider as a really good horror trope?
I think something that would touch, well, it's because I'm doing it myself with my own books, but I think it would be something that touches intimacy. And when I'm talking about intimacy, well, you could, I mean, body horror is about intimacy and also body image. But emotional intimacy, something that touches this. I mean, a good example would be the xenomorph in Alien.
Yes.
And now its symbolism really changed because the artist H.R. Giger, who was Swiss, by the way, his museum is not far away from Geneva.
Wow.
So, yeah, and his xenomorphs, before they were taken to be put into the Alien movie, were all women.
Oh, wow.
They were strictly women. They were really female entities. And then when Ridley Scott discovered the works of H.R. Giger, he said, well, these creatures are incredible, but in the movie, they represent, well, you know, abuse, terrible, well, sexual abuse, and they're more male, kind of. They're symbolically male in the movies.
Okay.
Especially the first one. But originally, no, most of those xenomorphs or creatures that resemble a bit of the xenomorphs were all usually women in his original works.
And
So,
have you been to that museum?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I want to go back.
Yeah, I want to
I
go.
want to go back. I can't wait to go back. It's an incredible place.
Yeah.
And even though we're talking about HR gig and how it can be very dark and somber, the location is very pretty. It's in the Swiss countryside. There's a castle behind it you can visit. And
Wow.
then you go to the chalet and eat fondue, and everyone's happy.
It
No,
sounds like sounds like a
Sorry,
field trip we need to do, Chris.
Yeah, definitely. This is gonna sound like a very male question, but we have a lot of writers who watch this show. So, what tips would you give for intimacy in terms of writing emotional intimacy and then physical intimacy? What's the difference as a writer?
I think that you can really do a lot of things thanks to dialogue. And again, it's really important. Let's say we're talking about two characters who know each other, let's say for a long time, then they are capable of talking to each other really as if they knew each other for a long time. So let's say we take two childhood best friends who consider themselves as sisters or brothers. Well, you can't be too polite because you know them so well. You can't be insulting either because you love them, they're your brother or sister. But you know, it's I think it's also thanks to casual language, because it's not because you use very casual language in your dialogue that it means that you can't write your book beautifully. But it's very important that the dialogue is quite authentic to who the characters are.
Does that answer your question, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, intimacy in general, I'd probably just stay away from it, to be honest.
Brilliant. Okay, we're going to move on to the second part.
Here's a new horror element: intimacy. Here you go. It's the new monster.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's a really good metaphor. Intimacy is the monster, the unspoken.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, we're going to move on to part 2 of the show, which is what's the story. So right after this video, Leyla, if you could let everybody know what Becoming Insane is all about, that would be great. So we're going to play this and then hopefully hear from you about that story. So, Leyla, could you please let everybody know what Becoming Insane is all about, please?
Well, do you want me to begin with a very specific kind of answer, or more, let's say, abstract answer? Which one?
You can answer however you want to answer, Leyla.
Okay, well, to put it globally, it's about two creatives who are childhood friends because they used to live. They live in the same neighborhood, so there's this sense of community. Who are a little bit, well, they're not in the best period of their lives because one is a writer who is not published, who is having a depression, and the other one wants to work in animation, but unfortunately he's a manager in a company and he has a family and he can't, and he has panic attacks. So it's about old infantile fears coming back, which distorts their reality completely. And you know, there are a lot of coming of age kind of books, but no one ever really writes about what happens afterwards once you've slain all of the monsters and the dragons. There are still a lot of monsters and dragons to be slain, and the irony is that they may not be like monsters. The irony is that there's a moment with my characters where they're more scared of how they're going to pay their bills rather than the creature or the so-called monster they saw or they thought they've seen. So that's a bit of the irony. It really is based on a very fairy tale-like kind of atmosphere during the mindfucks kind of scenes. There's one of the best atmosphere when it comes to being quite true to a fairy tale atmosphere would be the 1991 movie Legend.
Mm-hmm.
A very beautiful fairy tale line, but very dangerous at the same time. You don't know what's going to come out from it. And most creatures and monsters, well, I think, I'm not sure, but symbolize death. But in becoming insane, it's not about death, because death can be interpreted as separation. In becoming insane, it's the infantile fear of being eaten and devoured. And for an adult, it would be the fear of annihilation, either by something or someone, or a system or society. So it's about the fear of non-existence, being devoured, chewed up, swallowed, and
Yeah.
it's an infantile fear that I think anyone has today. We don't want to feel completely annihilated. We want to feel that we are our own person.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
obviously you mentioned the death element. I mean, only an idiot would write about death. But yeah, in terms of that feeling of trying to capture it, in terms of like when you are, like you said, I love the way you phrased being in your 30s though, as over 20s. I'm definitely going to use that in the future. I'm just in my over 20s. Not going to specify. But yeah, I love that in terms of writing about that sort of awkward period in somebody's life, and they feel like they're sort of fading into non-existence. That's a really terrifying prospect. If anything, that's scarier than death, because you're alive, but you're actually not doing anything with it, and you feel like you're helpless against it, which is a really terrifying concept, which I'm sure a lot of people could relate to.
yes, it's the fear of disintegration. And one element that can be added to that is the fact that you're being disintegrating inside something or inside someone.
Yeah.
So there's the very literal, in your face kind of interpretation, like a monster eating someone. And then there's, I suppose, the much more metaphorical and allegorical a way of viewing it, like, for example, being eaten up by an idea of what life is, of what this should be or not be, to the point where you're suffocated.
Yeah, how do you tell the line as a writer between the two? Because I get the whole concept, and because you've said about being consumed or by somebody else, it's taken me to a moment in Neil Gaiman's American Gods, where one of the gods consumes another person through an intimate act. And you get that that's a metaphor. But I also thought with Neil Gaiman, I thought, oh, hang on a minute. Like, I was reading that and I knew what you were getting at, but did it have to go to that level of horror? In terms of, anyone who's read American Gods will understand the scene that I'm talking about. But how do you toe the line as a writer between what you have as metaphorical and what you explain on the page?
Well, that when it comes to being devoured, that is thanks to the antagonist of the story, which is not the creature, but the antagonist of the story is someone that wanted power over my two characters when they were small. I won't go too much into details because it could be delicate, even though it's not something that is given in becoming insane at all. It's implied, but it's not. It doesn't go there. It doesn't. The antagonist, I didn't write him to be frightening. I want him to be repulsive, so that the reader could feel disgust more than fright.
Yeah.
Because, sometimes the best horror comes from things that are a bit weird and strange rather than just the classical horror.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm sorry, I was smiling then. No, it wasn't that your answer. It was the comment section.
Oh,
Yeah, Anna was saying about that scene. She remembers it definitely well and didn't sleep well that night. Yeah, they made a TV show of that as well.
Yeah, and it's equally as graphic in the TV show.
Yes, it is.
So I was like, okay.
I haven't watched it. I haven't watched it yet. I usually stay far away from fiction books, from reading fictional books while I'm writing. I either go back to the classics or watch documentaries, historical documentaries, or maybe a series or something that is in a genre completely opposite to what I write.
Is that so you don't get some sort of influence from that story and that kind of style into your writing?
This, and also because there's always a horror element somewhere.
Yeah.
It's different, but there's something that is a good idea. There's something that is, that you can take, well, not take, but that you can be inspired by.
Yeah.
For example, I always say, if you've only read the classics, Dostoevsky, Kafka, Shakespeare, etc., go watch an anime. If you've only, let's say, watched independent French movies, which are very good, go watch a fantasy movie. If you've only, let's say, read historical books and biographies, which are great, I do read a lot of that, go read fantasy and study some Tolkien. Plus, there's some history there because he himself was inspired by some historical mythology of Europe and the North, and of course the languages. So here you go.
Yeah. What do you feel? What do you feel when it comes to history? And you've mentioned it a few times. You obviously love history and adapting that into your work. What do you feel is important for a writer to do when they're writing about history or incorporating history into their work? Is there a tip you can give to make that more efficient when they write it?
Always make sure where you're falling on, because stay away from the conspiracy theorists, because always check the sources. Plus, let's say what you can do is just study the superficial layer of a certain subject or a certain person. Like, for example, on YouTube there will be a video, and then this person will recommend you the books, and then you can, for example, buy the books and read the books. But always make sure that it stays factual. That it's something that is proven and factual. Don't go to conspiracy theories, because otherwise, no. Now, there can be a lot of fun, of course, and with Kennedy, it's something else compared to lizard people, of course, but one thing leads to another with them, and you fall on, I don't know, lizards from outer space or something like that. And I personally don't care. If they are lizard people from outer space, I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. But don't, put them, okay? You have to have respect for human history too.
See, Layla, I'm really interested because you said, obviously, you mentioned the classics a couple of times. And as somebody who knows, obviously, about English culture and sort of English heritage for fiction, I'm interested to see what it's like elsewhere around the world. So, like, for example, horror. How did horror, like, what would, in your native country, what would the sort of go-to horror be in terms of the classics? So if we mention classics in the UK, there's probably a handful of novels that people go, oh, you've got to go to these because these are the classic horror novels. But are they the same? Are the class sort of like Dracula, for example, by Bram Stoker? That's really big in the UK, but is that really big elsewhere? And what's people's interpretations of those classics? Because obviously the culture and the reason they were so big was very much exclusive to the time and what was happening, and they populated that and made it what it was. So then what I'm intrigued for somebody else coming from a different country, what their perspective of the fiction is.
Well, we're in Europe, so it would be the same perspective, even though it's important to note that in Romania, Dracula, or more specifically Vlad Tepes, the historical personality which inspired Bram Stoker, is viewed as a hero because
Wow.
he chased away the Turks. So that's very interesting to study one day. It's not about where I live, but more about my ethnicity, because my father is Moroccan and my mother is half British, half Catalan. And my grandmother, who was British, was also half Swedish. So it really was a mix between North and South. And I remember, of course, that my grandmother always used to read to me European fairy tales, or more specifically English fairy tales, Irish, Scottish. And then I'd have my dad who would introduce me to either North African, Moroccan, and even, well, let's say Arabic kind of fairy tales, mostly thanks to the 1001 Nights. And we're already getting into a little bit of different interpretations when it comes to the occult. Now that we're approaching Halloween, for example, in the Christian world, there are demons. In the Arabic world, they're called jinn. So genies, they're the ones that give you, the wishes.
Yeah.
And they really have a different kind of relationship between a person and a genie. They do have a relationship. You see, a person can have a relationship with a genie in the Arabic fairy tales. In the Christian world, not really. It really is good versus bad. In the Arabic world, it's a little bit of a mix with a little bit of thanks to the control, because then we go into Solomon, etc. It's really different. Like, for example, a black cat can bring bad luck for certain people, but in Arab countries, it's like, no, not at all. A cat is a cat. That's not what we're scared of. Now, what's interesting when I was a kid was to point out the differences between, let's say, the European fairy tales and the Arabic kind of fairy tales, but also the similarities. There are similarities in storytelling, because it's all about overcoming something, because it's mythological. It's based on mythology, so of course it's always about overcoming monsters, something, basically yourself sometimes, and just in a very different point of view and a different perspective.
Excellent. Right, we are about to move on to part 3 of the show, which is your chance to ask Leyla some questions. If you've got questions for us as well, please throw them in there. And we will ask Leyla some staple show questions as well. So I'm going to play part 3 of the show video, and we'll get straight into that. So community questions coming right up. All right, Chris, do you want to start us off with our staple questions, please?
Yeah, so Leyla, our staple question that we started with this season is, we're on the internet. This may outlive all of us. It probably will. If you had to give some advice to somebody in the future that was going to take on your collection of work, what advice would you give to them? What would you say?
I would say a bit of warning, because sometimes they can touch on certain subjects, because again, my horror is based on intimacy, or let's say intimacy issues, and I'm not talking about the romantic kind of intimacy. I'm talking about any kind of intimacy, even family intimacy. The horror comes from there. So, however, I would also say to them not to worry, because my books usually end happily.
Yeah.
I've put my characters through enough torture, so
Yeah. It's a bit unusual for horrors and horror thrillers to end happily. Do you ever get any sort of feedback in that sense, or are people generally happy with the happy ending?
I think they're happy, because from the reviews I had, the readers did feel that they were taken on quite of a ride, so they're just like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
'cause my latest screenplay horror, everybody dies. It's great. Okay, if you could take any character from the world of fiction, whether it be a TV show or a movie or a series, and adapt that character into one of your novels, what character do you want to work with and why?
Hannibal Lecter.
Yes.
I knew you were going to say that.
Really?
Yeah, as soon as we were talking about intimacy and consumption, I was
Yeah.
thinking about Hannibal before. I was thinking,
Well,
He would be a
I'm
very
not a
good
cannibal,
character.
don't worry. Did you see the series they did in 2013?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a brilliant
Yeah.
series. I've seen all the
Yeah.
films, read all the books, and watched all
Yeah,
the
I love the series. They really did a great homage to the characters in the books, really.
Yeah, which is always nice when they do that.
They
Mhm.
did. Although I loved Hannibal Rising, and I don't think there is a version of Hannibal Rising that is really good. You know, when it goes into the reason he is a cannibal and why. Like, I found that book really difficult to read, because it didn't justify it, but it explained it.
Mhm.
And you know, the book's been around for a while now, so I don't think I'm spoiling anything here. But the first time he consumes another human being, it's almost out of necessity, but it's also horrific. Like, and I can see how that could be sort of like a seed, so to speak, for his behavior in the future. Definitely.
Well, there were a lot of, because I do study true crime, like a lot of women today, cannibalism has several meanings when it comes to serial killers. First of all, it has a spiritual meaning. If we want to, take certain cultures, certain tribes, it's to consume the power of someone else. Same thing with animals. In certain tribes, certain cultures, if you eat a specific animal, then you'll get their qualities as a result of for certain serial killers, like Jeffrey Dahmer, who was not a sadist, by the way. It was about, he was a serial killer, a horrible serial killer, but he was not specifically qualified as a sadist by the psychiatric experts, it was to keep people with him inside, to be completely merged and one finally with someone. And for others, it's sexual and to have power over them.
Yes.
Even cannibalism has very different meanings depending on who is eating the other human beings. Bon appetit.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, cannibalism was not one of the things I thought we'd ever talk about on the show. But in the series with Izard, when Hannibal is serving him his own legs and he's slowly cutting bits of his legs off, I was like, this is next level horror.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, Chris, go on with the next one. We got a question in from Halo, so we'll ask that in a sec.
Yeah, so another one of our staple questions is if you could change the ending to any fictional series, whether it be TV, books, movies, films. Movies and films are the same thing. What would you change the ending of and why?
I think it would be the series, the ending of the series The Fall with Gillian Anderson. I think it was, it is on Netflix, I believe. I actually watched it recently because I love Gillian Anderson. And it's about catching a serial killer. But the thing is that at the end of the series, he really does get away with it because he dies before being brought to court. And I really wanted to know more about the whys and the hows he killed, why those specific women and how, and maybe much more confrontation between the character of Gillian Anderson and the killer.
Yeah. I haven't seen that, but I'll check it out at some stage. Cool. We've got a question in from Halo. Thank you for your question, Halo. She says, what narrative concepts are easier to express in French in English?
Depression. The very kind of independent French kind of, it's all gray. It's not, which actually is good for, I think, English books that we're not into a very bad versus good, but a very gray kind of zone. No one is good, but no one is bad.
Yeah. Yes, interesting that.
I mean, if you said in English that you were depressed, you might say, I feel really low.
Yeah.
Let's say, I'm just saying that. What would the French equivalent be? Can you give us just a little snippet of French?
Oh, désolante. Je me sens très mal. Mal. Now, mal, there's different translations. Mal can mean evil. Mal can mean bad. So in this sense, I feel bad. Je me sens mal. Or I feel very bad. Je me sens très mal.
I guess you don't speak French either, Chris.
No, she could be saying anything right now.
I
have no idea. But
I'm not cheating. I'm not cheating. I'm not cheating. Don't worry.
Could you say you were watching the Writing Community Chat show in French?
Je regarde the Writing Community Chat show. Ou autrement, je pourrais dire. Qu'est-ce que je pourrais dire encore? Je regarde le chat show de la communauté de l'écriture.
That sounds good. Brilliant.
Was the last bit a community of creative creatures?
No. It was the writing community, because it's in verse, you see, in French. I'm watching the chat show of the writing community.
Right. It's a bit like Welsh. That's
a community of creative creatures works just as well.
Yeah. It does.
Well, we're all creatures in a sense. I mean,
Yeah.
thank you, Anya.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love language, but I'm terrible at learning them, so it's not very good. Okay, Chris, we're into our hour is up, but do you have any more questions before I finish off with our final question?
Yeah, so we were talking about depression, but we'll go a little bit morbid. The final question that we have that's a staple question is you're on your deathbed, you're looking back at your writing career. What would you be happy with? What is success to you?
Contentment and peace of mind. Because you see, success, if you want to see it as, you've gained your millions thanks to your books or whatever, it comes and it goes. You still have to work for another success. So better enjoy what you do. Better do what you love as a profession. But the real success comes from the contentment that you feel. Now, and the peace of mind. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be happy every day or hyper confident every day. I don't think it's possible for a person to be confident in themselves or in their work every day of their life. What's important is to know yourself, know what you like, what you don't like, and know what you want. That's important.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a great one. Brilliant. Okay, so we have to wrap this up, unfortunately. Been really enjoying this chat. But before we do that, Leyla, where can people find out more information about you? Where can they buy your latest books and follow you on socials, all of that stuff?
Well, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and also TikTok under Leyla Cardena. So my name is exactly like on the cover of the book. You can go on the website. I think it's in the description below. No,
It is,
okay.
yeah.
So you can go on the website, or you can go directly to Amazon to get Becoming Insane in paperback, Kindle, and it's also free on Kindle Unlimited.
Fantastic. That's amazing. Brilliant. It's so good to have you on the show, Leyla, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening and a great week ahead. And if you're busy or free, if you're not busy on Friday, we got a Halloween party show on. If you want to tune into that, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, why not? I mean, I'm not going to discuss my song this Halloween, but I need some Halloween atmosphere on the house a bit, so it will be great.
Yeah, do that. Fantastic. Anna says, this was a fabulous interview. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for tuning in. Everybody.
You, Anna. Thank you very much.
Please stay very safe, and we'll see you on Friday for that show. And again, thank you so much for the support you've given us and reaching that milestone. It's incredible for you to do that. We are forever grateful. So from us, it's a goodbye, and we will see you just in 2 days for a big party. So bring some drinks, bring some friends, and we'll see you there. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.